Hi, it's Elle here, and today I have Brad Olsen with me at Awakening Cosmic Reality Show. Brad is a published author, and he has been exploring Antarctica last year. I saw Brad's photos and some of his videos on Facebook of his time in Antarctica. So I asked Brad today to share some of his experiences, what he saw in Antarctica, and so he is on the show to discuss that today. Thank you, Brad, for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me on. Should be able to shed a little insight into what I found down in Antarctica for you and your listeners. I was in South America for 4 months, early last year and 2018. And in January last year, I got on a sailboat for 26 days down to Antarctica from Ushuaia, Argentina. As far as I know, I'm the only researcher in this field that has endeavored to find answers to many of the mysteries that we've heard exist down there, from massive ships under the ice to antediluvian civilizations with pyramids poking through to what the Nazis were doing down there, and as well as dinosaurs and megafauna, megaflora. Antarctica once being a temperate climate. Some of those aren't mysteries, some of those are just straight up science, but it was very interesting what I found.
And you have a presentation of some of the things that you had seen there?
Yeah, so I've been going around to conferences and doing this PowerPoint presentation called The Hidden Anomalies of Antarctica. And the first half of my talk, I just describe a bit about the trip I took and then some of the research stations that I visited, as well as sharing some of the hard science that's going on down there at many of these research stations. And then the second half of my presentation, I get into the speculation, what actually may be down there or rumors that we have heard. So it's kind of a mixed bag of topics that I cover, but I just want to try to give everybody a large overview of what's really going on in Antarctica.
And what are some of the things being researched there at the research stations that you encountered on your trip, and just the overall landscape of Antarctica?
Well, the overall landscape is it's very much a frozen continent. Right now, there's only 1,000 people on the entire continent, although now people are heading down for the summer. Numbers are increasing. So it's a very barren place. The polar plateau is over 2 miles deep of ice accumulated. And it's just a place where very little lives and grows, at least the way we understand it, as far as trees and bushes, and land animals. They're really non-existent there. But there are tiny little insects that can survive. There's lichens, there's mosses, and of course the ocean is very much alive. Marine life, from the penguins that we've all known to seals of various kinds. Leopard seals eat penguins, elephant seals eat fish. There's also quite a few different species of whales that are down there. And the interesting thing about the animal life is that they're very tame, that they have no fear of humans. So you can go right up to animals and take the picture. You want to get that close. Some like the leopard seals with blood from penguins all around them. May not be the wisest move to get too close to them. But we had a whale in one case swim right under our boat, and they're just curious, as we are of them, to get a closer look, see what's going on. Some of the science that's going on down there is the study of the ice fish, which is a keystone species, food source to many of these mammals I just mentioned, as well as being a very unique species of mackerel fish. You can see it on the screen right now. I spoke to a marine biologist whose only job was to study these ice fish, which are unique species found only in Antarctica. And they have no hemoglobin. They're practically translucent, and they are able to survive underneath the ice in sub-freezing temperatures. So they have adapted to the freezing temperatures of the Antarctica water. So that was pretty interesting to learn about that, as well as some of the fossils that have been discovered in Antarctica. We often hear of the Loch Ness Monster, the plesiosaur, has been found in Antarctica, as well as a couple different species of dinosaur that are unique only to Antarctica. This one, see the screen I'm showing, is it looks like a cross between an alligator and a salamander, and it is only found, the fossils are only found in Antarctica. So that's quite interesting. Most of the scientific research that I came across was mainly concerned with not only studying the natural environment as it pertains to the animal life, but also to the climate change, which is very pronounced in Antarctica. Considering there's only, as I mentioned, 1,000 people in the wintertime on the entire continent, things are happening very rapidly down there. And this is rather interesting because that you would think that humans would have a direct impact, and they do, but human impact from far away. So in fact, many new islands are being discovered, as I show on this. The painting on the left was in the 1980s of the ice sheet that covered this portion of Anvers Island, which is where the Palmer U.S. base is located. And I got an opportunity to go there. And the image on the lower right shows Pie Island, which had once been buried in the sea ice in the 1980s, and because of melting, has exposed this new island. It's called Pie Island because it was, there's a day in the month of March called Pie Day, and the ice bridge that connected it to Anvers Island collapsed, revealing an unknown island. And I'll just flip forward in my presentation. I show a bunch of maps, very old maps of Antarctica, but also of South America. The Piri Reis map shows what appear to be islands off the coast of Antarctica that have as yet still been discovered. So that's really interesting that new islands are being discovered virtually every year, and then different islands are from 1519. That's 500 years ago. And Magellan didn't even sail through the Straits of Magellan between southern Patagonia and Tierra del Fuego until 1520, exactly 500 years ago. So how this map maker was able to depict South America so accurately, as well as some of the islands down there before anyone had even set eyes on the southern continent, is one of the great mysteries. And in the liner notes of the Piri Reis map, this admiral, this Turkish admiral who drew the map, said that he was using source maps all the way back from the time of the Library of Alexandria. So this suggests that there was quite a bit of knowledge of the geographic world in ancient times, and that these maps were just copied from one to the other. So that's kind of the gist of some of the scientific work that's being done down there. There's also research at the South Pole, detecting neutrinos coming out of the Earth and cosmic rays. There's also a search for meteorites, which fall in Antarctica. Of course, they fall everywhere in the world, but they're more easily found on the big white tableau of Antarctica than anywhere else. So that's that. And then the second half of my talk, I go into more of the speculation of what might actually has been claimed to be down there. And one thing I did find for sure is that there is a massive no-fly zone over a portion of the South Pole. Now, it's interesting, if you're standing on the South Pole, there is no north, south, east, or west. Everything is north, of course. So you can't say it's to the east, but if you can see this map here, this is a map from one of Linda Moulton Howe whistleblowers named Brian S., and he claimed that that hole was not too far off from the South Pole, and he actually flew over it and said it was absolutely massive. Admiral Byrd also reported on that hole and said that it was so large he wouldn't have had a problem flying his plane into, circling around, and then coming out of. And if these images on the right from outer space are correct, you can see how absolutely huge it is. That you could probably fly a dozen planes side by side into it, all around, and then come out. So that's absolutely true that there is a no-fly zone, but finding really credible images, more specifically video. I would love to come across video of this hole of someone flying over, but that, of course, is expressly prohibited. So somebody who would film that would get in a lot of trouble if they got caught. Plus, there's just so few people there. That's what makes this no-fly zone somewhat preposterous. Is that why do you need to have such a strict no-fly zone if there's very few, if any, flights that even go over there? And I do know that most of the supplies are driven up to the South Pole, Amundsen Scott Base, via a cat track. So they're just hauling it up on land over the ice, not even flying it in. So more mysteries of South America to ponder.
Yeah, maybe they have the
Do you
no
have
fly.
any insights? Go ahead.
Yeah, I have memories of being a secret space program asset in Antarctica and cataloging the various Atlantean outposts and the technology and ruins that are there. So that's the only insight that I have, and I've mapped out those locations and some of the other things that I know, secret stuff that they have there. So that's the only insight that I have. Honestly, I've never been to Antarctica, but I have a fascination because of those memories, and you've been there. So I wanted to hear a first account of your experiences, what's actually there, and to get your perspective on that reality of what Antarctica is.
So you have memories of being down there with the secret space program?
Yeah, and
yeah.
You can't use guns there. Something about the magnetic fields makes weapons not work so well up there. So they have something called plasma swords, where it's plasma weapons. Those do work, but not bullet projectiles.
Yeah.
So that's what I
Wow,
have.
interesting.
Yep. That's.
Of course, it's very cold down there too. That might make them guns malfunction as well.
Yeah, something to do with that. Okay, you have a slide there?
Yeah, so I'm sure you've heard of Corey Goode. So he was also down there under the guise of the secret space program, and he says he worked with this interplanetary corporate conglomerate. And you can see on the map there actually 5 locations that he has identified. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where they have these under ice cities as depicted in this illustration that he gave. And Corey Goode's been very vocal in saying that these are the controllers of the world that have bases down there, basically using slave labor, basically running some kind of manufacturing. And because Antarctica is very geothermically active, in fact, it's the most volcanic continent in the world with 91 active volcanoes. You would have a source, you would have a power source, and you could potentially even have a semi-temperate climate underneath the ice, heated by these vents, as he shows in this illustration. Corey Goode has also said that they're pulling out megafauna, such as this woolly mammoth you can see in this picture, and have discovered megalithic buildings, such as depicted here as well. Now, again, these are illustrations. I wish they were photos, even better video, so we could really identify what these looked like, including some of these giants that he talks about that are called pre-Adamites, and they wear very unusual clothes, strikingly similar to Egyptian garb. But the big question is, who was this civilization 35,000 years ago, and are they Earth, or are they extraterrestrial? That's a big question.
Extraterrestrial,
And
then Earth descendants.
He was able to
a little bit of
either
both.
or.
Yeah.
Or had lived here. Yeah, a little bit of both. Maybe had lived many generations here with these ships that have crashed. Now, supposedly there are 3 massive crafts under the ice. Show you some pictures here. This is one of them. I cannot verify if these pictures are real. I'd be very interested if anybody could verify it, but I kind of think they're fake, just because I have an expert who does expeditions down there, and he said in this picture on the left, this double prop Huey helicopter does not exist in Antarctica. They don't have any down there. So he kind of disqualified these pictures from that. My best finding of one of the massive 3 crafts is this one, which can be found on Google Earth. Although if you go to it now, you'll see the picture in the middle there. It's like they put up a circus tent, and circus poles are the only thing protruding through. But if you go back to the Wayback Machine on Google Earth and plug in these coordinates, you'll see this, what looks like some kind of massive craft under the ice. And I love it when I can find corresponding data points that would suggest that other people or other research has verified this. So the Farsight Institute has these remote viewers who are able to pinpoint a location and then go there and remote view. And they did it on this site a couple months ago. And that site has been verified as being some kind of massive structure under the ice, as being very, very old, but defunct. It was no longer functioning. So the three massive crafts are nicknamed by our alphabet agencies, Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. And I would suggest this is probably one of those three. And it's very interesting that it would be found in the new Schwabenland area of Antarctica. So that's why this would be a really interesting site to go and explore. In fact, if I were ever able to go back there, say with a film crew, and go explore around, I would love to go to this particular location because it happens to be one of the German bases right there in the old New Schwabenland area. And I'll show you this map here, Kohnen base. That's where this craft is located, right there. And the Germans never left New Schwabenland. I found Cold War era maps showing the West German flag, and they've kept this year-round base at Neumayer, and they also have a seasonal base out by that craft at Kohnen, which is a bit inland. Now it's called Dronning Maudland or Queen Maudland, but the Germans knew of it as the New Schwabenland that they claimed in the late 1930s. And they went down there in an expedition very similar to some of their other expeditions to, say, Tibet and looking for artifacts. So the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark is actually based on fact. The Nazis were exceedingly interested in finding any kind of artifacts or information, downed craft, or in this case, this massive craft on the ice, to help them win the war. So they believed in this force multiplier theory that even though they knew they were smaller in size with their numbers, that their technology would be superior to help them win the war. So this is a map of the New Schwabenland area that has recently emerged. And in this map, this region here is the Schumacher Ponds, and this is where I believe their base 211, the New Berlin base is. It's also interesting to note that their badge or emblem of the expedition, 3839, you can see there, has these little oak leaves. Now, to the untrained eye, that would just be a little design, but the swastika and oak leaves clearly reveal the Thule Society fraternity, suggesting that indeed this journey of the Nazis to establish a base down there was very much rooted in the occult. I find that very interesting.
Well, I can send you some things too.
So,
from those memories of being in Antarctica, I mapped out the locations where I had been and what I had seen in some of the bases that are down there. So if you want, I could send you that later.
Oh, I'd appreciate that. Yeah, I'm always collecting information, and any kind of new findings very much. This is one of my pet projects that is probably going to continue for the rest of my life. Just always very interested in what can be found out about this very mysterious land.
Yeah, and the leaves, I very much believe that it has a connection to the secret societies and esoterics, because what I remember from Antarctica, it's not interplanetary corporate conglomerate, it's planetary corporations, one of the corporations on Mars, and they have the wings kind of inverted wings and pyramid emblem symbol that very much probably has same connection as those leaves. So I could send that to you as well, so you can take a look if you want.
Oh, that'd be great. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I usually don't announce anything until it's a done deal, but I have been invited to be on a new History Channel show. I won't mention the name of it, but they want to find out more about Antarctica, most especially New Schwabenland. This is an area just steeped in legend. And all these mountains you can see on this Nazi map that has reemerged, they all have German names. So they were out there flying around, mapping, climbing these mountains, Molig, Hoffman Range, and several other German names all around this area. So it's been a location that has been very much of interest to Germany for, gosh, going on 100 years now. I have a feeling that they never really left. So I'd love to go down there and hunt around and try to find that New Berlin base, and even bring some Geiger counters to see if this area had been hit by nuclear bombs during Project Argus, which was a top secret nuclear bomb experiment down in the Southern Ocean in the late 1950s. And they could have lobbed a couple over here in New Schwabenland to put the Nazis out of their misery once and for all. But by that point, they had probably already moved most of their operations to Argentina and Chile. Another part of this whole post-World War II Nazis escaping through the rat lines is there are massive land holdings in Chile and Argentina that nobody really knows who owns them. And I mean, some of these land holdings are as big as some of our smaller states, the size of Connecticut or Rhode Island or Delaware, just massive. And they could have very easily built some underground bases here and worked on their backward engineering, reverse engineering some of the downcraft and or some of the allied malevolent ET races that they were supposedly working with. And also in Antarctica, you can find other what look like craft under the ice, and also can be found what look like entrances to bases. And anybody that wants to do their plug in these numbers, go look at these places themselves. This is probably the best entrance, which is also very close to New Schwabenland as well. And it has two entrances, one down here and one up here. The second one doesn't translate too well off of Google Earth, but this first one sure does. That kind of makes you think, and that's very big. You could fly an airplane into that. It's quite large. Then you get a lot of other things, these really strange pictures that come out of Antarctica, what could be down there, including images off of Google Earth, where you can see what look like antediluvian civilizations, or in this case, Mayan step pyramids with stairs going up, steps to the top. Very interesting, because Mother Nature does not create in perfect right angles like this. But you see that in this image here. But what I find so interesting is, though, you can spot many of these very unusual locations on Google Earth, there are other cases where they clearly just put a mask screen over it and don't even try to balance out the color or the contours of the ice. They just put a square white screen. We don't want you to see this, but it's okay if you see that. So it's kind of like when you look at what might be on Mars or other planets, the moon. No, you're just looking at images that are being provided either through Google Earth or satellite. And it just suggests to me that there could be some red herrings in all this, meaning there could be some, wow, look at that, proof of antediluvian civilization, but it's just really some clever Photoshop that got inserted into the Google Earth program. That's why in this second half of my talk, I call it the speculation section. I can only just say, this is the best information that I found, and information, go to these coordinates, look at it for yourself, share information with me or anyone else that researches this, or put it on the internet, and let's keep the discussion going, because this is very interesting information for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, there had been videos coming out from Linda Moulton Howe with Spartan 1 and Spartan 2, who had been Marines and military, who had gone into Antarctica and discovered these huge basalt structures poking from under the ice. So that came out last year, I believe. So she's reported on those things as well. Some of their testimony, of course, their names are kept confidential, because if they came forward with their names, they might be attacked or whatever. So it's quite interesting what's coming out of Antarctica.
Sure is. And that the Spartan 1 and Spartan 2 said that they near here, the Beardmore Glacier. So I show this map as a reference point there.
There's actually interesting, what I mapped, there's kind of submarine entrances and docking ports near that area. So I've mapped that out, and Spartan 1 and Spartan 2 disclose some of that same information, except the maps that I had put out was like almost 3 years before these interviews came out. So it's quite interesting to have some of this confirmed by other parties coming forward.
There's some maps here of what Antarctica would look like without the ice. And you can see that there are indeed very long and massive underwater areas that could be explored. If you were intrepid enough with the right kind of submarine, you could get very far inland to Antarctica. So talk about a place to hide where nobody's going to find you. This is it. I mean, apart from the greatest depths of the oceans, I would say the last mysteries here on planet Earth are Antarctica and the depths of the oceans. So when you look at this map without the ice covering, you see the potential of going well inland to some of these locations, including what you just said, right up to the Beardmore Glacier, which would be about here. So you could go under the Ross Ice Shelf and get right up to that trans-Antarctic mountain range, which is also visible on this one. That is the main spine of mountains that extend across Antarctica, and these are all volcanically active. These are all fault lines, and this area is rife with volcanoes. And I'll show you a picture of some of the fault lines here. Cue that up. Also in my presentation, I don't know if we have time to get into it, but I also discussed the Black Goo, which was discovered, near South Thule Island. Here's the fault lines on the map, including on the right, you see the fault line that goes right up the mid-Atlantic Ridge and then right through New Schwabenland, there's the Schumacher Ponds, and these are the main rift system of Antarctica, where a lot of the volcanoes are located. So that also corresponds with Corey Good's map of where these bases are located. Right along, see every one of them is by a rift zone. So they're employing the geothermal activity and energy there.
Yeah, there's more than 5. The ones that interplanetary corporate conglomerate, planetary corporations, whatever you choose to call it, there's more than 5 of them that I remembered. So, but those are key locations there.
I would assume so. Yeah. Yeah.
It's quite interesting.
Yeah. It is indeed. And of course, yeah, if you wanted to hide from even being spotted on satellite, under the ice domes are prevalent all across Antarctica, including one of the largest freshwater lakes in the world that hardly anybody's ever heard of, and that's called Lake Vostok. And Lake Vostok is right over the Russian base. Here it is. It's the 10th largest freshwater lake in the world. It's about the size of Lake Ontario, one of our Great Lakes. And the Russians were able to core down through 2.2 miles of ice to get to the dome over Lake Vostok. And finally, in 2016, they had just come up with a clean of the water of the lake, and they found bacterial life that has never been discovered. And they think it came off of a fish that has also been as yet discovered. So
they took a core sample
every year, new finding.
So they drilled down and take a core sample and find all of that.
A sample. They went through.
Oh.
Yeah, they drilled all the way through and got to the lake level. The first time in 2012, the drill was contaminated, so they didn't get a clean sample. But in 2016, they got a clean sample, and showing that it was quite. It had some life forms that had yet been so the final part of my presentation, I talk about these islands off of Antarctica, the South Sandwich Islands. You can see on these two maps here, this is South Georgia, and this chain of islands, the South Sandwich Island. This is about the location of southern Thule. We know about northern Thule. In fact, there's an area of Greenland called Thule. This is a mythical land of the Vikings, and the Nazis were absolutely fascinated with this too. So that there would be a southern Thule Island. This is what it would look like on Google Earth, and some other mapping taking place. Like the point of interest that I'm going to show in a second, where the base was located. Yeah, they can't make that out on Google Earth. They just do this map here to keep you from seeing what it really is. But a lot of people don't know that the Falklands Wars was actually fought on 2 fronts. One of the naval forces of the British went directly to the Falkland Islands. That's what we heard. There's even another part of it that went down to these South Georgia and South Sandwich Islands, including the surrender papers for the entire Falkland Wars were signed right here at this was an Argentinian base that was on this site for a while, and they were studying the Black Goo in a frozen cave here on South Thule Island. So when the Brits won the Falklands Wars, what they do, they destroyed the base. But they took the Black Goo back to the UK, and there they found that it life form was deposited there 74,000 years ago. It had been brought because it can rapidly clone. So there was a period of time where during the Toba eruption on Sumatra, it's in Indonesia, there's a great big caldera there called Lake Toba. I visited it when I was traveling around the world. And the Toba eruption was so violent that it created this nuclear winter we hear about. If there was a nuclear war exchange, that it would kick up so much ash that it would create a winter-like environment all around the world, and of course greatly alter life as we know it. And that's what happened with the Toba eruption. It had reduced the global population to about 70,000 people. That's about as many people as you can fit into one of our large on the world. Well, Earth had always been destined to be, on the surface, a human population, sentient human population. And there was a period where it looked during this Toba eruption that it could be taken over. It was our most vulnerable point. So benevolent ETs brought down this Black Goo. And when it's in a frozen state, such as on South Thule Island, it can't replicate, it can't cause any harm. It's just like a solid black tar. But when it warms up, then it can do certain things. So this is what the Argentinians were studying. And some researchers think the real reason for the entire Falkland Wars was not to capture the Falkland Islands, which has far more sheep than people and is not very strategic at all. I mean, there's not even really much oil there, although they claim that was the reason for it. But it was to get down here to South Thule Island to get this base, and more importantly, to get the Black Goo, and then to take it back to the UK, which they did, to the Marconi laboratories. And these are all really interesting videos your listeners can discover. Miles Johnston in the Bases Project has done several interviews on the Black Goo, as well as Harold Kotzvela, who I've spoken to on the phone, a German guy, and he too has done a well, if this stuff got out into the world, it would wreak havoc. And indeed it has. And I'm proposing in my next book, coming out at the end of this year, called Beyond Esoteric, Escaping Prison Planet, that this is one of the symptoms of the Morgellons phenomenon, these fibers that are coming out of the skin and basically leaving a black goo, tar-like substance, and also remaining in the skin. It's quite perplexing because this is a very new phenomenon. Morgellons is more than just a disease. It is now being found in mammals, pets, farm animals, and people all around the world. So I am proposing that it has been unleashed, and the timeline is right along what was taken out from Argentina when it got back up to Britain in the late 80s, and then in the 90s you have extensive chemtrail aerosol spraying, and in the late 90s the first Morgellons cases starting to come out. So I do believe there is a tie-in to all of this, and it has been unleashed, and we're in big trouble because it's going to be hard to eradicate it. Another thing I talk about in my presentation is the moving of the magnetic poles. We have often heard about the North Magnetic Pole motion, as well as the South Pole is moving. It is now off the continent. This is what the two poles may look like if there was a 40-degree pole shift, and these two poles change. Of course, it would also wreak great havoc on the rest of the world, but show you a map here of South Magnetic Pole is now off the continent. It is in the Southern Ocean and moving away from Antarctica, just as it is doing the same in the north. So it's very interesting that we should study all the things that are going on in Antarctica, all the science, as well as the speculation. I do believe that Antarctica holds most of the mysteries of this planet, would reveal itself in the form of antediluvian or megalithic buildings, which show that there were high-tech advanced civilizations on this planet at one time that got buried under the ice, which would show that they're very, very old. It would redate everything. If some of these craft under the ice could be verified and studied, that too would be a big game changer. And just understanding the nature of our polar ice caps and how they can move and shift, and how we found many different species trapped in the fossil records on Antarctica. And that makes it all so very interesting.
Well, I appreciate you showing me your presentation and what you have been sharing in the conferences. It gives us a new perspective from your point of view of what you saw there and what you experienced while you visited Antarctica. And how did you travel around on your visit?
Well, I'll play this little video clip at the end of my presentation, and you'll see the 74-foot sailboat that I called home for 26 days with some very interesting visitors coming over to take a look at our boat.
Coming into Port Lockroy. These amazingly beautiful, majestic mountains. And here are a bunch of whales frolicking and feeding, flashing us whales, tails. Wow. Woo! That is very close. It's only about 50 feet away. Oh boy. Oh man! Ho ho ho! Right under.
Jeez. Get that?
I did. Where'd they go? That's the weird feeling. Hope it's not Moby Dick. Amazing. Just amazing.
And there you have it. There's my home for 26 days on the Chief One sailboat out of Gdansk, Poland. There were 11 Poles and 3 Americans on our vessel. And we're all friends on Facebook now and reminisce of the good times. But I was the lucky one, though, the only one. There were even professional photographers on a boat. Nobody caught that except me with my iPhone, of all things. I had GoPros and other cameras, but just happened to have the iPhone right there ready to film. And what a great shot that was. And some naturalist friends of mine identified those as right whales, which are very rare, nearly hunted to extinction, but not for a few pods that survived the whalers, they'd have been gone. And they got that dubious name of a right whale because they would die the right way, that when they were harpooned, they would float to the surface rather than sink like most whales did. And so they'd be easier to pull onto the craft. So good to see that the whale population is slowly rebounding. The seal population was also decimated as well, but because seals breed much quicker than whales do, the seal population is almost back to its pre-1820 level when the first hunters started going down there and decimating the population of these aquatic mammals. The gist of my presentation here, these are a couple of my books, and I have a new one coming out called Beyond Escaping Cryptid Planet, third and final in the Esoteric series, and I would invite your listeners to check out some of my books. And Beyond Esoteric will have information on the Black Goo and Antarctica in it as well.
Excellent. And you went during the summer season to Antarctica?
Oh, you have to. You can only go in the summer. It's way too cold. But of course, seasons are opposite in the southern hemisphere. So right now is late spring down there, and the summer season basically begins in November and ends in early March. But I have questioned whether or not anybody's going to be able to go this year, because so many countries are shut down and travel is very difficult right now during COVID.
Yeah. And how warm is it during the summer season? Do you have to wear protective layers of coats and pants and all of that stuff?
Yeah, well, it's typically cold. You can see Luke, the other American on the trip here, he was wearing, gloves, hats,
We are coming
and everything
into
else.
Port Lockroy.
Get a little closer, you can see him. Yeah, I mean, even though it was a sunny day, it's still cold. Now, however, there were 2 days when it was warm enough for maybe 1 or 2 hours to just have our t-shirts on, and not with the winter coat. So it's kind of a misconception that it's always freezing down there. It's not. Just like in the Arctic region, there are days when it warms up. In fact, it's setting heat records both in Antarctica and the Arctic region, because there are big swings in the temperatures and setting new records. So
Yeah, because I had seen photos of you in a t-shirt and shorts, I think, so on the sailboats, and I'm like, wow, some days must be warm there, so you don't always have to wear layers of
right.
shirts and hoodies and all that stuff.
Yep.
So that was interesting to see. I'm like, wow, some days are warm and you can do t-shirt and shorts.
Yeah. And did the polar plunge a couple times too. Jumped in the ocean, and one time it was just warm enough to just dry off in the air, and the other time we had a sauna at the Vernansky, Ukrainian warm. But yeah, jumped into the freezing cold water amid the icebergs. Had to do it.
Well, while there, try out whatever's there to see how it feels, right?
That's pretty much it.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today and share your Antarctica experiences, the research, and some of the other interesting stuff that's speculation, what's there. I appreciate
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to be on with you, and happy to relay this information to interested parties that want to hear more about the frozen continent of Antarctica.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Oh, you're welcome.
Bye-bye.